Okay. I'm a little bit nervous because I'm being filmed, but I'm going to just ignore that. Okay. My name is Martina Stewart. I'm the director of the Mandatory Advising Program for the University of Utah, and I work in University College. I'm really happy to talk to you about the Mandatory Advising Program. So let me show you what we're going to be covering today. We are going to address what is the Mandatory Advising Program, why is advising mandatory, and what are we trying to accomplish with this program, when are students required to meet with an advisor, and then how does advising work for each advising point. So some of the resources you have for the Mandatory Advising Program, in the manual that you have, there's a section, I see you're all there, on the Mandatory Advising Program, so we're going to be going through that information. There's a PeopleSoft training that Steve coordinates that you'll be going to that will give you access to what you need in PeopleSoft to do mandatory advising. And then I send emails out to the campus community whenever we are notifying students about mandatory advising so that you're going to be up to date on what's happening with the program throughout the year. And then your colleagues here and within your department. As I said, I'm the director of the Mandatory Advising Program, and Jennifer Wozab is the assistant director. So she's another resource for you if you have any questions. In terms of PeopleSoft, in order to do the advising that you need for the mandatory program, you need to have access to PeopleSoft, and you need to be looking in PeopleSoft on a regular basis. In fact, I think for any student you're ever advising, going into PeopleSoft is really important because sometimes students won't tell you that they have a hold on their record for mandatory advising. So it's really important that you're accessing records for these students. The operator class that you're going to be given access to, it's the advisor operator class, the Mand Advise operator class, and then service indicators. That's going to allow you to remove holds for mandatory advising students as well as make notes when you meet with a student. If you don't have access to these, you need to contact Steve Hadley, and his contact information is right here. So before we start talking about the different mandatory advising program points, let's talk a little bit about this. Based on your experiences as an advisee and an advisor, what do you think is important to convey in an advising relationship? So the reason I'm doing this is we're going to talk a lot about logistics, but really this program is all about advising and the interactions that we're doing with students. So this is to set the stage to think about advising. Paul?
I think it's important to have trust with the student and a good relationship. If they think you don't know what you're talking about or something like that, then you just can't get started.
Trust and a good relationship. How does you build trust in a good relationship?
That's over time, but I just think you'll be willing whenever that question to answer them, or if you don't know the information, to find out and give reliable and correct information. And if you give bad information, then this person didn't give good information.
Right. Great. So giving good information, reliable information, and I also heard building a relationship, so being available. Great. Anybody have any other ideas?
I would say it's important to let them know that they're not alone in the process, that there's support and resources to help them make that connection, that there's someone that they can approach at the university level that knows them and knows what's going on with them and is helping them through, because there's a lot of information that can be overwhelming.
Yes. And that is really related to why we have the Mandatory Advising Program. It is so that students are required to interact with someone who is able to help them through and guide them through the university experience. Anything else? Other ideas? Okay. Well, excuse me? Okay. Good. Well, thank you for giving those ideas. Let's go ahead and look at the Mandatory Advising Program. So this is a program that requires undergraduate students to meet with an advisor at key points throughout their undergraduate experience. And it's mandatory because we won't let them register for classes unless they meet with somebody. We put holds on their registration, the holds you can see and remove through PeopleSoft. So it is required on our campus. And I think that really says something in terms of how much we value advising on our campus. We value it, and therefore we require that students interact with advisors. So why is it mandatory? Up until 2007, advising was mandatory for students that had a grade point average below a 2.0 and also for transfer students. Since about 1999, we had a voluntary freshman advising program. And with that program, we invited students to come in. And if they came in, we'd give them early registration for 1,000 and 2,000 level classes for their next semester. And what we found through that program is students that came in and met with an advisor tended to have higher grade point averages, higher rates of retention, higher graduation rates compared to students that didn't. And we would see about 55 to 65% of the students, they would come in voluntarily. So it's hard to say that it's only the advising that's making the difference for the student population, but it certainly is a positive, that's some kind of positive outcome. So based on this and based on a lot of studies nationwide about advising and advising in relation to retention and graduation, in 2007, Sharon Aiken-Wisniewski proposed to the campus that we have a mandatory advising program. And I think this was really good timing because some of the departments across campus at this point were also really interested in interacting with their students earlier on in their undergraduate experience. Some of the ASUU students also were really interested in advising at that time. So a lot of things kind of came together to make it possible to require advising on our campus. That first quote, "Students don't have time for optional," I think this is really interesting and I think really true. You know, a lot of times, I know for myself, unless I'm required to do something, I might not do it. So this is saying to students, you have to do it and you need to make time to be able to do it. And there's advisors here that want to interact with you. So these are the points that students are required to meet with an advisor during their first year, during their second year, and then if they are undeclared and have 60 or more credit hours. So what we're going to do now is walk through each of these advising points, and you in your manuals have some information that goes right along with this. So we're going to start with first year advising, and you can see here we have learning outcomes. The reason we have learning outcomes for the mandatory advising program is we really consider advising as teaching and learning. Because of that, we have learning outcomes and certain things we want our students to learn based on interacting with us. And the learning outcomes for first year are right up here. Student knows what their advisor does and how to contact their advisor. Student understands how to generate and interpret a DARS. Student understands the purpose of general education requirements. Student builds a class schedule that is consistent with their interests, abilities, and personal situation. Student understands the value of involvement. Those are 5 learning outcomes. That's a lot. Most of us are meeting with our students in 30-minute appointments. What I think is really important with this first-year advising is to try to understand who this student is that's sitting in front of you and then adapt your advising to that student. So depending on what is going on, you might not get through all 5 of those learning outcomes. These learning outcomes there are here to really start to guide your advising in relation to what you're talking to students about. The other thing I'd really encourage you to do is think about how you can make your advising an active teaching and learning opportunity for students. So it might be something as simple as, rather than generating the DARS for the student and walking them through it, have them generate it themselves so they find out where it is in CIS. Have them start to walk you through so that they're really actively engaging with it. So just keeping in mind, advising is teaching and learning, and these are some of the targets of where you're going. In relation to the logistics, all first-term students that are admitted as freshmen, regardless of credit hour count, are selected for mandatory first-year advising. What I mean regardless of credit hour count is some of the students you're going to be interacting with have earned either advanced placement credit or concurrent enrollment credit. These are credits they earned while they were in high school. If they earned even 60 credits while they were in high school, they're still going to be selected for first-year mandatory advising. If they earn those credits after high school graduation, they're likely going to be a transfer student and would not be required to do this first-year mandatory advising. So each first-year student receives an email, and that email links to a website that gives them details about the program, lets them know who they should meet with for first-year mandatory advising. And then when you look in PeopleSoft, you're going to see a positive service indicator and a negative service indicator. That positive service indicator means they're eligible for early registration. They're going to get priority registration for 1,000 and 2,000 level classes when you go in and mark that they met with you. And that negative service indicator is the hold. The PeopleSoft training that you're going to be going to is going to teach you a little bit more about how to use PeopleSoft and how to read these things that you're going to be seeing in there. When you go in and mark in that advisor meeting panel the MAP first year appointment type, they're going to get the 1,000 and 2,000 level priority for their next semester. For students that start in the summer or fall, they get priority registration for spring. For students that start in spring, those are the students we're advising now, they get priority registration for fall. So in terms of who advises whom, departmental advisors advise students that are interested in these areas: business, fine arts, engineering, humanities, mines, and College of Science. University College is going to advise students that are interested in these other colleges that you see here. Undeclared students also see a University College advisor. The LEAP program, for some of the sections of LEAP, advisors actually go out to them and students get their priority registration and their hold cleared through visits to their classes. Honors College does some advising of their own students as well. And this is the way it currently is. This tends to change. So next year it might be a little bit different. Next year more colleges and departments might be advising their own students, but I will let everybody know what's going on with that. This is a timeline of how advising works, and on the left you see the fall timeline, and then on the right, in parentheses, you see what's going on for spring. So in the fall, we will have between 2,500 and 3,000 first-year students that we're advising. In the spring, we have about 200 to 300 students, so it's a much smaller population. So in September, or for spring semester, March 6th is when we selected our first-year students. We sent them an email, we placed a hold, and they were notified, like I said, on March 6th. Then we're currently advising those students, so some of you might have been hearing from students that they have this hold and they need to meet with an advisor. They will get early registration for fall semester. And then if they have met with you, they will get early registration starting April 16th for fall 2014. For those that start in the fall, we notify them in September. We advise from September to November, and then it's early November that they get the priority for spring. There's a certain point at which their registration date has already arrived. At that point, you still go in, you mark that they met with you, you clear their hold, but they no longer get priority because there's no priority, right? Once your registration date is there, there's really no priority. If students want to register for any upper division classes, which isn't very common for first-year students, they need to wait for their regularly assigned registration date, which is going to be a little bit later than the priority date. Any questions about the logistics of how this works? Okay. So what the student does is contact their advisor, make that appointment, talk to their advisor. The advisor is going to advise the student on their second semester schedule, and there's more information in your MAP manual about some things to cover in the advising appointment that I'd encourage you to take a look at. You're going to go in and mark the MAP Fresh meeting type in the advisor meeting panel. Make notes about your appointment. When you mark that MAP Fresh meeting type, eligible students will get the early registration for 1,000 and 2,000 level classes for their next semester. This ensures they're going to get those, especially like writing and math classes that they really need. And then you're going to remove the freshman advising hold. So in your manual, there's information, an overview of the first year advising appointment. There's also, in the resource section, there's information about common holds that first year students can have. And this, I think, is important. When you're in PeopleSoft and looking information up about a student, if you notice they have an immunization hold or a hold from income accounting, that's another pretty common one. Admissions is a common hold for incoming first-year students, primarily because they haven't maybe sent a final high school transcript, or if they have concurrent enrollment and they haven't sent their college transcript, they might have a hold on their record. So again, I think in an effort to be as helpful as possible to students, being aware of what's going on and helping them to connect to offices if they've got holds is really, really helpful. And then when you go to that PeopleSoft training, you'll get a manual on mandatory advising, PeopleSoft and mandatory advising, which will really help you to navigate those panels. Okay, let's move into talking about the second year advising program. So with the second year advising program, what the goal is here is to connect students with their major advisor. So as I said, with that first year, University College advises the undeclared students. LEAP and Honors also advise first-year students. And Center for Ethnic Student Affairs advises first-year students. TRIO advisors advise first-year students. For second year, those programs are not advising second-year students because we want students at this point to connect with someone in their department so that they can learn more about their major, more about how to get involved in their major. University College is going to advise an undeclared students and pre-nursing students, but other than that, if they come to us and they say, oh yeah, I want to do gender studies, we're going to say, you need to go over and make an appointment to meet with Pat, and she'll get you connected to the department. So we really want them to connect to the department. The idea here is to discuss the student goals and plans and holistic academic planning. One of the ideas behind this program is to help students develop this rich and holistic undergraduate experience. And like you were saying earlier, Lam, the campus is so big it's sometimes hard to know what exists here. So our role is to help them connect and see what might be appropriate for them to get involved in. These are our learning outcomes for second year advising. Student knows how to connect to their major advisor. Student knows how to declare their major. Student understands the curriculum and requirements for graduation. Student understands how to get information about options and resources to enhance their undergraduate experience. Student understands the value of co-curricular experiences. Curriculum and also what's happening outside of the classroom are part of learning outcomes for second year students. So in terms of the logistics and how the program works, students who are enrolled fall semester with 2 or 3 prior terms of enrollment and 60 or fewer credit hours are selected for second year advising. The reason we don't say every single second year student, the reason we have that cap on 60 or fewer credit hours, it's purely a resource issue. Looking at students with 60 or fewer hours, we're talking about 2,500, approximately 2,500 students every fall that are selected for second year advising. And right now, that's what the campus can handle for advising. When you look into PeopleSoft, students are going to have a positive service indicator on their PeopleSoft record. So we don't actually place a hold initially. We select students, we email them, we tell them you need to meet with an advisor by the end of February to avoid a registration hold. So what your role is going to be when you meet with that student is to go into PeopleSoft and mark that you met with them so that they don't eventually get that hold. So it's a little bit different than the first year. Here's our timeline. In November, we select students, send them an email, notifying them of the advising requirement. Between November and February, students meet with an advisor by the end of February to avoid that registration hold. And then in March, a hold is placed if they haven't met with an advisor by the end of February. So we just place those holds on students. And we continue to email them to remind them that they need to come in and meet with an advisor. So the student identifies who their major advisor is. They make an appointment to meet with you. You're going to advise them on how to declare the major, schedule planning, how to sequence their courses, look at those other learning outcomes for second year mandatory advising, go into PeopleSoft and mark that MAP second year appointment. This is so important. Students aren't happy if they've met with an advisor and they keep on getting those emails and eventually get a hold. So it's really important to do that PeopleSoft step. Make notes about your appointment, and then if the hold has been placed, you're going to remove the registration hold. When you go to PeopleSoft training, Steve is going to train you on how to make those notes and what's appropriate to put in the note panel. It's really important that you do that because that's a way for not only you to keep track of what's been said, but if a student comes in to see me, I can see what you've been talking to them about. And I think students are getting a better advising experience by advisors taking those notes. So I was talking about 2,400, 2,500 students, and about half of them will see you before the end of February. About half of them will see you March and later. And one thing to keep in mind with second year, and one of the reasons I think it's important to get in that habit of looking into PeopleSoft, is you might see a student in August for second year advising. It's not really what we think of as second year advising season, but if they haven't met with somebody yet, they're still going to have that hold on, and they're meeting with you because they need that removed. So you will be seeing these students all year long. Any questions about the logistics of second year advising? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about first year and second year students. What do you think might be some primary concerns for a first year student and a second year student? What classes? Mm-hmm. Gen Ed classes, what classes in general? For a first year student, yeah, it's kind of all brand new, kind of overwhelming. Any other issues or maybe even what might be some other concerns that a first year student might have?
I think a lot of it is not knowing what to do, what to study.
Mm-hmm.
The majority might be undecided, unsure of their declared major.
Mm-hmm.
And seeking information about career exploration and discovery about their strengths. I think that will be a main concern of a first year student.
Mm-hmm.
The second year maybe are getting closer to declaring something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first year it's just all very new, and it can be somewhat overwhelming, I think, with all the options. So some exploration, maybe taking a variety of classes to see what really interests them. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes with our new students there's some concerns too just about the whole social environment, right? They're entering a new social environment, making friends. For students that are here from out of state, might be kind of homesick and missing where they're from, missing their family. What about, let's talk a little bit more about second year students. What types of topics might a second year student be interested in exploring more?
I think they might want to lean towards more career development and making connections.
Mm-hmm.
More sort of the future or job related.
Mm-hmm.
Concerns like what can I do right now that can be more intentional about what would help me when I graduate.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thoughts.
Good. Good, and that's been my experience. A lot of times first year students, I've noticed too that I tend to ask open-ended questions to get my advising session going so that I can start to understand the student, but I might be doing more explaining. Second year students, I'm kind of expecting them to have a little bit better understanding of the institution, and they might be doing more of the talking, and like you were saying, Lam, they might have some ideas about what they want to start to get involved in or really be open to getting involved at that point and starting to explore some things that are happening outside of the classroom, like internships or service or doing research, that type of thing. Okay, good. Well, let's move on and talk about the third advising point, which is the undeclared. And this is, really the purpose here is to motivate students to move forward in attaining their degree goals. These are students that have 60 or more credit hours and are undeclared. So what we want students to do is either declare their major or if they're not sure about what they want to do, initiate the major exploration process. We select students with 60 or more credit hours and at least 2 prior terms of enrollment that have not yet declared a major. The registration hold is placed in the spring semester, and only students that are listed as undeclared will receive the hold. So we talked about 2,500 to 3,000 first-year students, about 2,500 second-year students. The population that we're talking about here is 200 to 300 students. And in fact, the number of students that are undeclared and are selected for this advising has been cut in about half since we started doing second-year advising, because now we're getting students connected to their advisor sooner so that they're declaring their major. But we still have usually a couple hundred students that are undeclared and are going to have this type of a hold. What is really important from the department perspective, again, look in PeopleSoft to see if they have that hold. So you're going to declare them in the major and also remove that registration hold for them. So to get the hold removed, they either need to meet with the department and declare a pre-intermediate or full major. So like for social work, this is a major you have to apply for. If the student met with you and you put them into pre-major status, that's great. Remove their hold. They know what they want to do. Gender studies, you'd be able to declare them right into the major, likely, and again, remove their hold. If they're unsure about what they want to major in, they can initiate major exploration with the university college advisor, or they can take this 1 credit hour class, UC or LEAP 1050. Have any of you heard about that class? Pardon me?
We talked about it
a little bit today. Okay, so it's a 1 credit hour, half semester class that really helps the student understand the major and career decision-making process. That's the focus of the class. So it starts out with some self-assessment where the students are starting to learn a little bit more about who they are, what their interests are, what their unique strengths and abilities are, what their values are, and then how those things might relate to different options that they have at the university, both in terms of majors and also in terms of involvement opportunities. This is a great class if you meet with a student who really isn't sure what they want to do and they're motivated to engage in the exploration process. I think it's a fun, engaging class. So the advisor is going to go in, declare the major, do what they need to do in PeopleSoft, and remove the hold. So one thing I wanted to point out is when you go into when students go into CIS, some of them are going to see this message. You have not declared a major. Pre-major status is not a declaration. To declare a major or to receive assistance in gaining admission to a major, please see the departmental advisor for that area. If you need help in selecting a major or in raising your grade point average to gain admission to a restricted major, please see an advisor in University College. So this message goes to CIS for any student that has 60 or more credit hours and are undeclared or pre-majors. So if they're pre-majors, they're not going to have a hold on their record. And the reason I wanted to mention this to you is you might get calls from students saying, oh, I got this message in CIS that I need to declare a major. And then you go into PeopleSoft and you don't see a hold. The reason you don't see a hold is there's not one there. The hold is only going on to those students that are undeclared in a major. But a lot of students are seeing this, and the reason we have that out there is to let students know that if you're in a pre-major, that's not a full declaration of a major, and you need to be declared in a major in order to graduate. You need to declare your major to establish your catalog year, which determines the requirements that you're going to be held to for graduation. So this is an effort to get students declared in their major. So let's talk a little bit about, let's say you have a student who's considering majoring in your department. How might you interact with a student who's still kind of exploring and considering your major?
I always ask what their goals are, what they like to do after they graduate, what are their plans,
Mm-hmm.
do you have an idea?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Goals.
I have a student who says, my plan is to go to law school, but I want to practice in family law, so I'm thinking about social work as a major to help me get there.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about it, that was a good match, and talked about the curriculum and the program.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of engaging a little bit more and find out what their plans are and what the next steps are.
Mm-hmm. So learning a little bit more about long-term goals. Great. Any other ideas of how you might engage with a student who's thinking about your major?
But just kind of what draws them to this major, what made them think about
Mm-hmm.
learning about this major and going to what their interest is about it.
I think that's a really good question. That's something that I do with almost every student I meet with when they tell me, oh, I'm thinking of majoring in business. Oh, tell me a little bit about that. How did you make that decision? That can help me assess if they've really thought this through or if it's something that they're saying because it's of interest but they haven't really looked into it. So it gives me a starting point as I'm interacting with them in terms of the type of information I can provide them that might be helpful for them as they move forward. So yeah, trying to assess where your student is. What types of resources do you have in your department that you think might help a student decide if this is a good fit for them, or what kinds of things can you do to help a student decide if this might be a good fit?
I think we just have information about what social worker, the values of social workers are.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of career paths, what different jobs you do. But social work is a very, it's a helping profession, so we look for like certain characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
So we have brochures, information about explaining about the field and the values and ethics of social workers.
Great.
And the different examples of jobs that you would do
Mm-hmm.
to see if that's a good match.
Mm-hmm.
We take a look at like personal engagement or community engagement. What kind of things have you done that's maybe relevant or the same, and have you tried out?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of other things. So that's sort of a guide that I use to kind of help students explore whether that's a good match. If you have someone who's never had any exposure in community services or any social service related, then it's time to talk to them about maybe trying to engage in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right fit.
Good. Good. Yeah, and the reason I'm bringing this up is you are part of the major exploration process for students. Sometimes they come to you because they know what they want to do and they're ready to declare. But a lot of times students are still exploring. So starting to think a little bit about questions and about resources that can help them determine if this is a good fit, I think is an important thing. So thank you for sharing your ideas on that. What I wanted to do is end by showing you the Major Exploration website, which you can go to for information. And there's also a video there that I'm not sure if you've seen. This is a video of students talking about the mandatory advising program. So it's not scripted, it's just spontaneous students talking about what is the mandatory advising program. And this is where that email links them to.
Or a program that helps students in this big university find an individual experience to help them on their path to graduation. The program is required so that we can kind of give you that help that you need, that direction, tell you where you should go, what classes you need to take, kind of help you focus on what you're really there for, which is school.
I think mandatory advising is just a way that will help students find that confidence in the Christian continuing institution and how to succeed as a student here at TU.
Early registration means that if you meet with an advisor early on, you can register before anyone.
I got to sign up for the classes I needed and the classes I wanted because I did the advising and I got early registration.
After meeting with my advisor, I felt like those doors began to open. I knew who to talk to, what class to take, what internships to look into.
I feel like on campus you have to build connections, and that's a perfect way to build connections.
Go ahead and take the initiative, make an appointment, go meet with an advisor.
I would tell students to come in to an appointment with a list of questions and a positive attitude, and always follow up if you have any questions, even if you think it sounds dumb. It usually isn't. One
thing I like to have them be prepared for is to be ready to have a conversation.
Print your JARS report, come in ready, and try and do a little self-reflection before you go in. If you're feeling really lost, maybe you just go in with an open mind and a list of your likes and dislikes.
I say just do it, don't be afraid. Especially for freshman years, do it. That's the right time to start. And I like that the right time to start.
So that's the video, and then from here, this is the website that students link into. And over on the left, you can see second year undeclared. So this is another resource that you might want to take a look at. So that's the information that I had to share today. Are there any questions, concerns? Okay, very good. Thank you.